This photograph shows the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, convened in Tokyo in 1946. Allied prosecutors spent 2.5 years meticulously documenting the wartime crimes of the Axis powers to deliver justice to the perpetrators. In Germany, Nazi physicians faced the gallows at Nuremberg for their medical atrocities. But here in Tokyo, an entire class of war criminals was notably missing from the docket: the scientists and doctors who engineered Japan's massive biological warfare program. The program surfaced in the official record exactly once. In August 1946, a Chinese prosecutor briefly referenced Japanese experiments with poisonous serums on civilians. The tribunal president immediately dismissed the claim for lack of evidence, and the matter was permanently dropped. That dismissal protected Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii. He was the architect of the human experimentation program, commanding a network of thousands of researchers. Yet he and his staff had seemingly vanished into thin air. Instead of testimonies, the only trace of their work was a cryptic code word whispered by insiders, maruta, which translates to logs. No one in the courtroom pressed to find out what those logs actually were. The Tokyo trials failed to prosecute one of the most horrific scientific operations in human history. To understand what was buried and who helped hide it, we have to look at what Ishii's team was actually doing in those final years of the war. This map illustrates the scale of Unit 731. It was a 6-square-kilometer military fortress containing more than 150 buildings, located in occupied Manchuria. To the local authorities, the facility operated under the cover story of a harmless lumber mill. The Japanese military placed this facility in mainland China to access an abundant, cost-free resource essential for their research: human test subjects. This is what the scientists meant when they talked about logs. The Maruta were living human beings. They were Chinese civilians, Russian prisoners of war, anti-Japanese partisans, women, and infants. Inside the inner prison blocks, medical researchers infected these captives with lethal pathogens. To observe how the diseases degraded internal organs in real time, surgeons routinely performed vivisections, invasive exploratory surgeries conducted while the victims were still alive, and usually without anesthesia. Other departments pushed the human body to extreme environmental limits. Physiologist Hisato Yoshimura marched prisoners outside in freezing weather, submerging their limbs in ice water. Once frozen solid, he would strike their arms and legs with a short stick to test the acoustic resonance of frozen tissue before experimenting with various thawing techniques. In another wing, subjects were locked inside hypobaric chambers. Researchers systematically dropped the barometric pressure to simulate high-altitude conditions, documenting the precise moment the victim's eyes and internal organs ruptured. As a fully funded, state-sponsored institution, Unit 731 functioned with military efficiency, reducing human lives to disposable raw materials. This ruined concrete facade belongs to a facility with a specific tactical objective: weaponizing these medical findings. Defying the 1925 Geneva Protocol, General Ishii intended to manufacture pathogens for mass deployment on the battlefield. The fortress operated as an industrial-scale factory. It housed roughly 4,500 incubators specifically designed to breed fleas. In a matter of days, the facility could produce tens of kilograms of fleas infected with the bubonic plague. These crowded civilian centers became the testing grounds. Between 1940 and 1941, Japanese aircraft dropped specialized, biodegradable bombs over Chinese cities like Ningbo and Changde. As the casings broke apart midair, they released the plague-infected fleas safely to the ground. The aerial drops triggered severe outbreaks of bubonic plague, cholera, and anthrax. Historical estimates indicate these biological attacks killed hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians and decimated agricultural lands. Unit 731 had engineered a system to take localized laboratory sickness and mass-produce it as a military weapon, executing large-scale civilian murder with clinical efficiency. This column of advancing Soviet tanks forced an abrupt end to the operation. In August 1945, the Red Army invaded Manchuria, driving rapidly toward the Pingfang complex. Facing imminent capture, General Ishii ordered an immediate and total erasure of the facility. The researchers gassed the remaining 300 prisoners, forcing those who survived the initial wave to consume potassium cyanide. Skeleton crews of Japanese troops then moved through the complex. They burned the corpses in the courtyard and used explosives to systematically blow up the laboratory buildings, attempting to reduce the sprawling fortress to rubble. The scientists and medical staff boarded trains for Japan. They were issued cyanide vials and given strict orders by Ishii to commit suicide if captured, taking the secrets of their research to the grave. The Japanese High Command directed their resources toward obliterating the evidence of their medical crimes rather than mounting a military defense. Their priority was ensuring there would be 0 surviving witnesses to testify to the Allied forces. When American investigators arrived in post-war Japan, they began interrogating former military personnel. Within weeks, they discovered the existence of Ishii's biological warfare network and the massive trove of human experimentation data his team had smuggled out. The geopolitical landscape was already shifting into the Cold War. American military scientists realized that Japan possessed years of exclusive research on human pathogen interactions and biological delivery systems, data they desperately wanted to keep out of Soviet hands. This photograph shows General Douglas MacArthur, the supreme commander of the Allied powers. He authorized a secret arrangement with the Japanese informants. In exchange for exclusive access to all blueprints and human research data, the United States government would grant full immunity from prosecution to General Ishii and the physicians of Unit 731. The Soviet Union eventually captured and tried 12 members of the unit at the Khabarovsk war crimes trials in 1949, sentencing them to labor camps. The United States government publicly dismissed the Soviet trials as communist propaganda, refusing to acknowledge the biological weapons program. Shielded from the tribunals, the perpetrators assimilated back into society as free men. Many went on to hold prestigious positions within the Japanese medical establishment, and several founded highly profitable pharmaceutical companies like Green Cross. The architects of these biological atrocities lived out their lives in comfort and prestige. They were protected by the international powers tasked with delivering justice, demonstrating how quickly ethical boundaries dissolve when military intelligence enters the market.